For 40 years, I've walked the line between worlds and am well versed in death. But I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Moe, and this is The Missing Piece. Good evening, New Orleans. I'm your host, Trish, and this is The Missing Piece. It is Monday, October, my favorite month, October 3rd. And October, before I forget, because I have been working on projects for it all weekend, October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I do have a Boo Bees shirt that I created, and some of the profits for that will go towards the National Breast Cancer Foundation Research, or no, just Foundation Inc. Yes. So that will be coming soon. I will have a link for that as well, for my store under my YouTube channel, and which is just The Missing Piece with Trish Moe. As well as my new website launching this week, which I've been saying for like 2 months now, but I had to decide which was best to combine my businesses and such. So I also want to thank Carnation for sponsoring me, as well as the network. And again, this is 105.3 FM New Orleans and United Public Radio Network. We're also broadcasting live on Parapost Network. And tonight, as I told y'all, this was back, I know we talked briefly about it like a month or two ago in the summer, because I was in the woods a lot. But I am tonight. I do want to. I'm excited. We've been trying to plan this for a few weeks now, or a little while at least. And I have the Kansas Research Organization, right?
It's the Kansas Bigfoot Research Society.
Yeah. See, I know. This is why I should have my other screen open. Anyways, so I have Dan from the Kansas Research Society. And do you all have a website? I just had your Facebook page, but
we only have a Facebook page right now. We do have our paranormal site is rtpkansas.com.
Okay.
So we do have the website there. That's the paranormal side, which is linked to this as well. So yes.
Yes. When you said you're updating, I didn't know if you had an older one to refer people to, or because I didn't know you existed until about 2 months ago when I came across your Facebook page. So just give us, Dan, give us a little bit of a background to how you all got started, where you're all from.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm from Wichita, Kansas, Midwest. I've been here all my life, 50 plus years, right at 50. Jason Roberts is the owner of Kansas Bigfoot Research Society. He started on another team that was called Bigfooting Kansas. That one has been dissolved because the owner stepped away. So Bigfooting Kansas, we brought everything over to Kansas Bigfoot Research Society. They started 2010, I believe, 2009, into the Bigfoot research in Kansas. They were doing some traveling around, doing some hiking, and came across some prints in central eastern Kansas, down here. Yeah, just mid Kansas on the eastern side. Came up with some prints, and from there, it just blew up. We found, well, actually, I wasn't here, part of the team when they found it, but over 40 miles or so west of Wichita, in the Nenaskal rivers, and there's several basins of the south and the east and forks. They were doing some trail running through there, and chasing prints, and they came across some horsehair that was had some fleshy material against it in the
Huh.
fence. So they took it as a specimen. We still haven't got that tested yet, though. But um, yeah, we've been interested in the foot for quite a while in the Kansas. We've heard a lot of stories, so we just follow up on what we can to see what we can come up with.
So it's interesting, I've lived in Kansas off and on probably half my life, but and I've lived in near Canada. I grew up in with a national forest in my backyard, in New Mexico. So I've been places where um, Bigfoot is and Sasquatch is very well known,
Mhm.
very especially New Mexico, growing up there in New Mexico, and my native background. It's just it's something nobody even questions it, up in the mountains there. But when you look on maps and such where Bigfoot sightings have been reported, I noticed the Midwest isn't, I mean, there are scattered reportings, and sightings and things like that. But people here, I've decided, just don't report anything ever. I mean,
Right.
that's for crimes. It doesn't matter. Like there's it's just it's something that I don't know. This even went back to like UFO research that I was doing in cowboy time, like early 1800s, where it's normal. All these people, their families, they're like, oh yeah, you know, great grandpa so and so wrote about that in his journal. But we don't report things on a mass scale, I guess I should say. Do you know, what is your take on that? Why do you think that is?
Well, talking to several ranchers, talking to hunters that go out into the field, they all discuss seeing strange items out there, seeing foot, casting spots or
Mhm.
footprints, and they're seeing structures and stuff of that nature. But yeah, reporting it, they don't. I've only seen a few reports, um, mainly along the river corridors, the Smoky Hill River up there between Wilson and Salina. There's some caves along the river. We've chased a few things up there to try to find what we can find. But yeah, as far as reporting things, I don't understand why they don't. When you react to somebody or talk to somebody in the community about what we're out there doing, they all have stories.
Right.
But as
Yeah.
far as reporting them to the news, they just don't. The only one locally, well, actually, there's two stories locally that I know that has been reported to the media, and that was over in Hutchinson, Kansas. We had a couple that were reported along the Arkansas River or Arkansas, however the country that repeats that. But right there, they've had two sightings of a mature male, is what they said, walking it up and down the river, and then south of Wichita on the interstate, right there by South Haven, they had a report of a juvenile. Somebody broke down in their car and they seen a light colored haired, almost a light brown to a white juvenile Sasquatch run away from them in a fence line. But that's the only two that I've ever seen reported in Kansas, other than hearsay.
And it's interesting because, and it's more common for, obviously, even for UFOs or paranormal, anything to be reported around Kansas City, Wichita, Topeka area, because those are really the only. But Kansas, most people don't realize, it is a really big state with not that many people. I mean, yeah, we have the three big cities, but and even Salina, but it's not, as far as population and the amount of land we have here. There's a lot of land and not that many people on most of the western, and even aside from Wichita, the south, southern, eastern, and western um, parts of the state aren't very populated. So I know even in the Topeka, even close to the Topeka area. The first time I started talking about this before I reached out to you all, tons of people um, didn't contact the news to report it, contacted me and started sending me videos and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, of just areas which I could also resonate with because it's the same places that I had seen um, different markings and things like that um, right around my own, like literally in my own backyard, basically. So I found that really interesting too. I don't know if you all have had a lot of, directly to you, not to news and things like that, but directly to you, reports around the Topeka area.
Yeah, we've had several people from the Fall River, uh, Pittsburgh area over to the southeast in Kansas.
That's
Um,
south, right?
yes, yes, down
Okay.
in the south corner, down towards US 66, down there in that corner, Galena, Kansas. We've had several people come to us or catch us on Facebook and say, "Hey, we've seen this out here. Would you like to come out and investigate?" We've done a couple private properties out there that we've found some things out there, but yeah, people just don't like to report it to the news. I don't know if they just don't want to be ousted or, you know.
Well, and that is one thing. Kansas is kind of behind times as far it's not behind times. It's just, people are there's a lot of really small communities and um they're just a lot of people are pretty private here, they just don't want the publicity. Um they don't want people on their property.
Yep,
Which I completely understand that. That's something that coming from I was born outside of Roswell, New Mexico, so I completely get that. Families are still questioned by tourists and the government and everything else. So,
correct.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so Bigfoot, though, in your own research, for people who aren't as familiar, um, do you have kind of the background on, I guess, initial Bigfoot discovery or where the first you know, sightings occurred or anything?
The first sightings that I know of, some of the older sightings in Kansas were up in the Atchison area up north, the northeastern corner of Kansas along the Missouri River. I know there were several sightings up there, but they haven't had sightings there for years that I've known. I haven't heard of any, but it was a pretty non-populated wooded area there for a long time, and now it's growing out with populations. So, but yeah,
I
down
think
here in southern Kansas, we just have a few wooded areas, and most of the Bigfoot sightings we get are along the river ravines, the Nenaskals, the Walnut Rivers, the Arkansas rivers, and of course the Smoky Hill River up there in Midwest Kansas. But
now, have you seen a specific pattern to those? Like, do you think they're just going there for a water source, or do you think it's almost a migration type? You know what I mean? Like they follow the river. Um,
well, I would venture to say follow the river because most footprints that we were able to catch back in the time, that we did get a few castings from were heading south, and I don't know if they were. I mean, Oklahoma is renowned for their Bigfoot and Broken Bow area and the Tahlequah areas, and I believe maybe it's just the population is starting to grow in the central Kansas area with the farmers removing what vegetation is here, and maybe they're moving south, or they just may be doing that due to weather changes too. I mean,
right. Yeah, I
but we have
didn't
two neighboring
know
states.
if because the climate here is so extreme. well, in comparison to a lot of places, extreme both ways, So I didn't
Yep.
know if maybe it was like a summer thing, or something that they go to cooler weather in the summertime and head to um, the warmer in the winter, or vice versa.
Yeah,
Um,
that I haven't delved deep into. Um, we catch most of our prints in the fall. I mean,
really?
so yeah. Um, but again, well, number one, we dislike going out there in the deep summer because the heavy brush and ticks and everything. We always have issues with that. But we usually go out in early spring, or we go out in fall, so we don't see much in the summertime. But
Interesting. So now what is your theory on what exactly Bigfoot is?
well,
Do you,
okay, so I
there's so
differ.
many.
Yes, I differ from most of what my team believe.
Really?
Um, but again, it's just a intuitive feeling, I guess you would
Uh-huh.
say. But most Bigfoot to me are found in the regions where the Native American population is heavier, and
Right.
national forest, the protected national forest. Um, I've had several people talk to me along the line that they're possibly an ancestral line of Native American, could be their own tribe of some type, um, or protected by the Native Americans. Because I mean, uh, some some believe that some pictographs that you can find on rocks up in Nebraska, there's some in Colorado, that have basically a circle within a circle, is like a portal per
Mm-hmm.
se, that the foot use. Um, do I believe that? I haven't seen that yet. I would like to see that, but I have
Yeah.
not. But yeah, I do believe that they're an old tribe of I don't know, Sasquatch or Foot. I mean they're their own in their own realm, but I don't believe they're interdimensional. We've had some people say that they're aliens in big wolf suits, but I don't know if that's a true fact. But
Well, that's what I was going to say, with and that's when the last time I talked about Bigfoot on here, I was trying to I swear I just, of course, maybe I'm not supposed to mention that. It goes with the whole native background thing. We don't
mhm,
usually talk about these things. Um and I had this whole printout from a newspaper from 1876, I believe, um, which was from Washington State. But it went like I had it in my hand, right? I don't know what happened to it. But it went along with when I was reading that, it went along with what you were saying. But Washington had an Osage tribe back in the
mhm.
day. In Washington, there's tons of Bigfoot sightings and reports, and I don't know if it still is a law, but it was Bigfoot was protected there, legally protected from hunting for the longest time. Um, but this tribe, what made me think of that and portals, and we've talked about this sometimes with there's south of Topeka, there is the Osage State Park or State Lake. I don't know. I camped there once though, and that was the scariest night of my life. And
Really, wow,
because um first of all, being a medium, I was going camping that day, but of course, psychic medium, I know a lot of things I didn't know I knew until after the fact. And I had posted just a random movie clip on one of my social media of the Hunger Games, and where she's singing "Meet Me at the Hanging Tree." And so the next day, just randomly, I ended up camping with my friends, and we went to this spot, and I kept I kept getting messages from a man that the story, it, when I would stand under this tree, had a lot of energy. And I kept getting messages that this man was hung there. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. And I asked my friend, and they said that yeah, there were supposedly someone took their own life at that exact spot. Okay. But that didn't make sense to me. I'm like, no, this is something else. So um that night there were so which many times in the woods and by water there's a lot of spirits. But this was different. This was different. I kept hearing like getting boneyard and all these things, that and that a lot of spirits that had died there in a violent way, and something with hang. I'm like, okay, well, there's this tree. I get that. And when I was standing by the fire, there was something very large. Yeah, I mean, I could sense it. I could sense its frequency because I communicate with animals a lot of the time too, and but this was different. It had a um, different feeling. It wasn't human, and it wasn't a spirit. Um, I don't know, and it wasn't like an animal feels, as far as their energy. So, um, but we were staring at each other. Yeah, I couldn't see it because it was kind of far away, and I was standing in the fire, and it was in the woods, like watching us. And in the middle of the night, I wake up to something scratching, and I don't mean scratching a tree like I said, I grew up in the mountains. I know what a raccoon sounds like. I know what a deer sounds like. I know what a bear sounds. I know what a bobcat. I know what a mountain lion sounds like when they scratch a tree. This wasn't, and this was like intentional to let it be known that they were there. Um, and it was so loud, and it was during a full moon too. I might mention that. So later, after I got home, so I don't ever do research, but for on places before I go to them, because I don't want that to skew um, any of the messages or intuition or clairvoyancy I might have. And I did research on that, and there's a place by that where wagon. It used to be one of the wagon trails, through the state, and during the winters it was a specific spot where the settlers would um, get stuck, and it became called the boneyard because a lot of people died there just um, in the harsh winters crossing Kansas. Okay, well, that makes sense. But then I found out, digging deeper, that wasn't just a tree that one person was hung by. It was the hanging tree of Kansas. Like, it was the first hanging tree of Kansas, which was, I'm like, that's interesting. So there's all of that energy there. Well, then if you expand further from that, there were tons of reports of people hearing the same thing: screams in the night, scratching. They thought it was a bear because there had been bears spotted, on the highway, things like that. They thought maybe it was a bobcat, um, that they would scream in the middle of the night. For me, you go with walkers, shapeshifters, things like that. This was different though. Um, so that's one place I do want. It would be cool if y'all could come up and we could go there, because that's one place I did want to check out again someday. Um,
Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
and then there's a bunch around Topeka. Um, as far as, I guess, this whole area, in northern Kansas is on a specific parallel, especially like Atchison, and Um, so, what's your opinion on um, like the forest, the different forest symbols, not just the markings, like on trees and rocks and stuff, but the structures that people are finding.
Right. So, Jason spoke to you with a little bit about a couple of things that happened to them down in Oklahoma. Um, they went down in Oklahoma and they found there were probably 20 structures in this wooded area that they had gone to. Um, trees, 2, 3, 4 inches thick that were bent over in a in an oval shape, and it appeared to me by looking at the pictures that these were bedding sites. They had leaves inside and pine cones on the bottom, but they were almost igloo shaped, half igloo shaped, and they led down to a cave structure, which wasn't a very large cave. I mean, it was tall, not too deep, but they were everywhere. And then there's almost like a semi cross, like almost like a TP frame, bone frame, but not quite circular. It was only partials, and they could probably throw brush up. But yeah, they found several of those structures down there when they had their foot sighting down there in Oklahoma.
And that's what I was trying to find. I can send you, and I can also post a lot of the pictures I have. I haven't gone back to any of those places this summer again with the ticks and things that were really bad this year, and I already have Lyme disease, so um, but that was something that I found interesting this close to the city. Um,
Well, and that's another thing too. I was thinking on. So I don't know. There's not a lot of sightings that I've ever heard of in Texas and all that. Um, but we went down to Galveston, Texas, myself and my wife, and we did some investigating down there. We spent 3 weeks all together down there investigating the paranormal, of course. However, we came across more of an old lost Indian tribe, aka giant situation. So in 1900, they had the Great Flood, Great Hurricane down there that killed 6,000 plus people in Galveston. Well, so after that, they buried the city under 8 feet of dirt and rock to sit there and elevate it. But they found when they were doing that after the hurricane, they found graves of 7 to 7.5 foot tall Native Americans. I mean,
mhm.
hundreds of them down there. Um, so I don't know if looking at some of the maps and you look at through Oklahoma and you look into Kansas along the Arkansas and the Walnut Rivers, the Chisholm Trail back from the 1860s to the 1877, 1878 that drew up into Wichita, then later went on to Dodge City. That's where they brought all the cattle. So maybe I don't know. I've always believed that the foot and the squatch is more of a vegetarian lifestyle. They do eat some meats, but mostly vegetarians. But I mean, maybe at that point, because of the sparse land at that point, they were eating cattle and taking cattle from these. I don't know.
I've always well, I mean, I've always thought of anything in nature, um, it being very to an extent, animals are much more sensitive, obviously, than humans. So, um, and that's coming from growing up in the forest and in the woods. Um, I was thinking about this, especially with Bigfoot, and even with I don't think people realize that. Yes, we have drones and we have satellites and we have modern technology and thermal imaging and everything else. But my backyard was hundreds upon hundreds of miles of forest, of national forest, where people don't go. There aren't there's nothing. Well, there's forest, but there's not. There's still places that are uninhabited by humans.
Hmm.
Um, in the United States and many places in the world. So it's not uh, it's not odd to me that scientists discover new species of animals every single day. Um, so the fact that people think it's so crazy to even imagine something like Bigfoot existing, um, I was talking about that though with someone today. How often do you come across a dead bear in the woods that died of natural causes? I'm not saying like by hunters or traps or anything.
Not too many. They're
Yeah.
spooked away. I mean, they're taken by their
Very,
own.
very rarely do
Yeah.
you come across a dead bear. So people are like, well, why haven't we come across, um, a Bigfoot that's died of natural causes? Well, I mean, just because humans do these things, we're literally savages. So like, I always say that we're we're the we're the biggest monsters in the world. Um,
Correct.
because because it's the same thing as far as hunting. Um, we're also one of the few species that I was thinking about when children go missing and stuff in the woods and in bigger forests, and you always hear these stories of a 4 or 5 year old, and all of a sudden they came back, they turn back up a few months later, 6 months later, some of them years later. And they talk about the forest people taking care of them, or even some that have been raised by wolves or whatever. Animals don't, it's like the circle of life. They don't see something that's smaller or less. They know that that's going to disrupt the ecosystem and the
Hmm.
whole. They're smart enough to know. Okay, if we invade human territory, that's obviously going to be bad for us, and we can't coexist anymore. But another thing, if they see something like a child that's helpless and smaller than them, even with other animals, you hear about. I was thinking my giant, mountain dog getting along with this wild kitten that I brought in. They're it's instinctual to them. They'll fight it when it grows up, but not as
Right.
babies. Anything. We're the only ones that do stuff like that. Like, we don't.
Right. Well, that gorilla where that 5-year-old child fell into the pen, that gorilla
Oh,
protected the child, and I mean, even protected him from the zookeepers.
yeah.
So, yeah, why would a Bigfoot not do the same? I mean, they're humanoids, you know. So,
And I think with in New Mexico they discovered um some more of not only the giants but older tribes than they realized even existed in North
mhm,
America. And they didn't even consider those giants. There's I mean even look now, there's basketball players and stuff that are 7 foot tall. So these bodies or bones they discovered were between 7 and 9 foot. Now in other countries, there's Bigfoot reports of what, like 10 to 15 feet tall even. Um, but to this day, near the Mexican border, as far as and southern New Mexico, there's, I forget what it's called, that where you grow hair all over your, I mean literally like thick hair. Um, I don't know the name of that now that they refer to it. Do you know what I'm talking about
yeah,
though?
they had a, well, even the guy, the he was like 5'7", 5'8",
Mhm.
Barnum Bailey Circus. He was the guy that they called the or the dog boy,
Mhm.
dog man, and he was from New Mexico, and
Yeah.
all that hair just grew on his body.
So
Yeah.
there's more than there's a lot that happens more often than people realize. It's just
Hmm.
it's another one of those things that's not um it's not publicized. It's not like, why would you want, especially in this day and age, anything like that that you make public, and somebody wants to make it an experiment or a circus sideshow, or you know what I mean? So it's not that it doesn't happen. It's not that there's entire where I live, people don't want to be found up there. They live off the grid for a reason, you
Right.
know. And um we heard of entire families being like that, and covered in hair, and it was just normal. We thought that that happened everywhere. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Not everywhere,
but
but yeah,
I mean, if you haven't been you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know these
exactly,
things.
exactly right. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's, whole families. We've been multiple places. With South Dakota, we've been in places in South Dakota that time hasn't touched.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's just so beautiful. Just, you know, there's roads. I mean, they do have to get out every once in a while to get something. Somebody does, but yeah, it's just beautiful to see that stuff. Colorado, same place. We've gone to a few places where we've hiked up to some ghost town to try to find. Well, of course, over by Canyon City and Salida, we were there. Were some over in the 14ers. There's some Bigfoot sightings about 3 years ago that we went to try to see if we can see anything. Man, I tell you what, you start walking through some of them woods, you don't feel alone. You're not alone, but man, you feel so isolated from everything, and it's scary.
And see, I only feel like that now, but growing up there, that was felt safer to me than being, in a town or a city. Um,
Well, true.
Obviously,
Yes.
um, because that's all I had ever known as a kid. And absolutely, people ask me all the time, especially on the show. They're like, "Well, why is it that you've seen so many different cryptids and interdimensional beings and believe in, the elementals of the forest and the fairy folk and all these things?" Well, because that's where I lived. Like, that was my environment. Um, if you're around it all the time, that's obviously what you're going to experience. Um, and I wasn't a threat, so I was a kid. So
Right.
um, I think there's so many times that we don't realize, even when I go with people out in the woods now, or watch videos of researchers or investigators, and they just walk through like nothing else lives there. Well, if you think about it, um, there's so much unseen. Even little, termites and ants and worms and things like that. You're stepping on all of that
Hmm.
the second you step foot outside, or in any woods. So imagine that anything else you can't see, you know. Um, and I know that's a big. Most people just tromp through and don't even pay attention to what they're doing or what they're disturbing. And I always say that, like, what if bugs and stuff and even spirits that come, what if they don't even know they stumbled into our house half the time, you know? So what
Yeah.
if it's the same with humans? Like, we're just going through the woods and here we're in someone else's house. Like, that
Yeah.
that bed that you're laying in is their living room,
Yeah.
or like you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I mean, the whole ecosystem is alive, and you're
Mhm.
walking through a wolf's den, or you're walking through,
Yeah.
yeah, just all the animals live there, and all the creatures, even the cryptids. They're there, and they live through there, and you're walking through their home, and you know, going through the well, what forest was that we went through up? Well, I know one big one, the Blue Ridge Parkway over there by Marion in North Carolina. Just walking through
Oh,
there,
that's a big, yeah.
Oh, that was crazy. Um, just listening to the ecosystem, the birds and the animals, you can hear things that I don't know what they were, but it was a beautiful noise. But yeah, but you upset them because we walked through them. We were walking through them one
Mhm.
evening, and it went from, I mean, you heard everything to you heard nothing. It was just
Mhm.
silent. The wind wasn't blowing. The birds weren't singing. Nothing was going on. So somebody was upset. So we left. So
And that brings me back to Bo's question. I know little about Kansas geography. Any reports of them moving along power line right of ways? That's interesting because I was just about to mention when I'm in the woods and can actually dial into, it's easier for me to pay attention to my other senses. Obviously you don't have all the noise of the city and electronics and stuff. I can immediately s- detect hunting cameras, hidden hunting cameras, things like that, because they have a different frequency.
mhm,
And so I assume, and the same with many psychics and mediums, like I was talking about, animals feel different, spirits feel different, human spirits feel different than um, otherworldly spirits. There's different energy. It feels different. And so I assume with anything in the other animals and stuff, it's the same for them. We come in with all of this negative um, energy. I'm not talking like because of our thoughts or what. I'm talking about like literally from a city, or from a town or from wherever, or if you have your cell phone on you, even, or if you're holding a video camera or any of that, a radio puts out a specific electronic frequency, and that can be sensed, by everything. So,
mhm.
and it's foreign to them, and it feels um, electricity, unnatural electricity it does feel negative, you know. So,
Yeah, I've been in several instances where, yeah, the electronic, the energies, the EMF, sorry,
mhm,
the electromagnetic field is just so strong and so pulsating. Um, in our paranormal, we've had several people, well, we feel negative energy, we feel something is amiss in here. And a lot of times we've come to find out that it's just, a faulty kitchen stove or a refrigerator that's pulsating energy that it shouldn't be. It's on its last leg. They change appliances and it fixes a lot of it, or some bad wiring. But man, that energy does. I mean,
yeah.
it affects people.
I've had 2 heart attacks and a few strokes, because I'm that sensitive to EMF um, frequencies. I can't even certain times I can't get too close to power grids or like Wi-Fi towers and stuff. So,
Ouch.
but
Now you were talking about ley lines a while ago.
mhm.
Have you hit the 2 to 3 areas in Kansas that are bound by several just to feel the energy there?
Probably unknowingly. I mean, I'm always drawn to all these negative places. Oh, that's where the power line thing is. I that's what I've noticed. I'm always drawn to, even though they're dangerous to me, and I'm always drawn to these areas because there's probably something trying to give me a message there, and I didn't realize that was happening for the longest time, um, but I have ended up at quite a few uh, very significant places that you can feel, and then that gets into a whole different, we talk about when you have multiple energy sources. So, for instance, here outside of Topeka, there's the Kaw. Kaw Valley River Park, I believe it's called. And so there you have water, but there's also a train that runs right by the river. So there's another energy source, that puts out a lot of energy. So you have the water, which is a lot of energy. Spirits are automatically drawn to water.
Hmm.
Um, you have the train, which is another source. And then there's it's next to where Miniatures used to be. Well, I mean, it still is, but it's not operating. Um, which has towers and higher power, um, higher outputs of power lines and things like that. So you've got three major energetic sources there in one spot. Um, and many people believe that portals and such can be created from that alone, given the right date or
Well,
time.
speaking of Meningers, I believe, yeah, portals are well open there. That place has a lot of energy that was left there from a lot of years as well. So yeah, that's a crazy area.
And that's one of the areas that people see quite literally. I have pictures right in front of the governor's mansion of different footprints and things like that, which you would think which is astonishing for one, because the governor's mansion is completely fenced in, and of course guarded and everything, and there's security cameras everywhere.
Hmm.
So if something was trying to be inconspicuous, there's no way it could be, because that's kind of an open space. Um, but I'm wondering, either A, um, maybe those things, because I know a lot of times EMF exposure has that effect on me. Maybe it's very disorienting and it confuses them. And that's why they would be seen near power lines or out in the open like that, or somewhere that they wouldn't normally be, if they were in their right mind, I guess, or you know I don't
Yeah,
know, but
that's
there's like a do you hear that? Every time I say EMF, there's a weird like
uh-huh.
interference on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Let's see. Um, Trace said, well, she's from Nebraska. The Mormon Pioneer Cemetery. I've never heard of that place. Now, I don't know. I personally don't believe it's an entity that wears the fur of um, as a form of concealment for different, as like a predatorial thing. I think that's a completely um, different being. What's your thought on that?
Well, yeah, if they're predators, I would think there would be more sightings, more
Hmm.
visual and video sightings. I mean, because they would be going towards, they wouldn't be walking away from and trying to hide. But I mean, because they do, they like their sovereignty. They like to be hidden. They don't like to be seen, which is, I guess, hey, leave us alone. We're you be you, I be me kind of thing. And that's what they do. But yeah, I could never see them being predatory. I could see them
So
protecting their grounds possibly, but
one of most recently, and I only I've watched a lot more this year than I have in forever, but I only watch movies. If it's something I'm drawn to, and or somebody mentions that I should watch it, and it's something very relevant to to real life, And recently, the new movie Prey came out, which is another in the series of um, the Predator movies. I guess I never saw those either back in the day, and that's it's based on going way back before any of the modern or I guess the most recent ones prior to this one that are set in modern day. This goes back to the time of native and indigenous tribes, and you'll just watch the trailer for it, if nothing else,
Okay.
because that movie, and now since after seeing that, I'm like, okay, either that is exactly what Bigfoot is, or it's exactly opposite. Because again, I don't think it's I don't know, in all the times I've encountered Bigfoot type things in the woods and mountains and stuff, I'm like you, I haven't felt that aggression or that predatory, like certain animal behaviors would be. Um like big cats or mountain lions, things like that, bears. Um But that movie, and I couldn't even watch all of it because it resonates. It was like a trigger thing for me as far as extraterrestrials and stuff go that are the more predatorial type. Um, but it was very interesting how it just watched them, and they had no idea. They had no idea that was there. And that's exactly everything in that movie is almost exactly like things I've experienced, and that's terrifying. That's scary. Um, so that's a good one to
I'll check it
watch.
out. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Um, and the whole theory behind something that's almost translucent, which a lot of people describe a lot of things in the woods as being, even on
Hmm.
video. Even the I can't think of his last name, Mark. Oh gosh, from Colorado. He's one of the major Bigfoot investigators there. He has a channel called Colorado Bigfoot, maybe. I don't know. I just came across him recently when I was, um, planning a trip to the wolf sanctuary there.
Hmm.
Um, but he said the same thing. He said, after all these years, what I've discovered in the woods, there's things that look almost translucent, uh, like they're made of water or something. That's not the case.
Right.
I mean, we're all made of water. So so that's it's not like and there's so many theories on that too when it comes to spirits, and absorbing because it helps them manifest. Water does, obviously. That's why water attracts so many spirits, but um something like it's almost the same to me as like an invisibility, like a hologram, like a holographic, like a lot of the reported UFOs use, but it's on a being, which is interesting. Um, Animals can see it. Um, a lot of people that have been around these things long enough can sense them and see them in that sense. But I think that's what natives consider the forest people are like the elementals, which
Well,
I've seen.
yeah, with you talking with so like the team when they were down in Oklahoma again, they seen, so when they seen and found all the structures and stuff. Okay, so one evening they were camped. Okay, it's a little bit of a story, but they were camped in an RV out there. They were doing an investigation on a home that they believed that it was possessed by a demon. So they were down there. They've been down there like 3 times prior, just investigating the house and all that nature. Well, they started investigating the forest, and of course, that's when they found the structures and everything. Uh, One evening, several of them were in the camper because they did not want to sleep out on the ground because you hear stuff, you see things. They didn't want to be outside, so uh, half the team was camping out. The other half the team was in the camper, an RV, and they had turned the lights on, and uh, because they were going to go out to the restroom, so they turn the lights on, and they see somebody crouched down, standing beside a tree, and it was again almost holographic, I guess you'd say.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, there's somebody over there by the tree, and crouched down. You could see the shape of they said that you could see the shape of it. You could see his knees bulging out, his backside, and bending up, and he had an arm around the tree trunk. And but the thing, crunching down was almost 5 foot tall, and so somebody who wasn't as intimidated by the area jumped out and started running towards it, and all of a sudden, it kind of like disappears behind the tree. They see on the other side of the house what they thought was another being, another squatch. They seen the silhouette of him. He was trying to. They this is what they thought he was trying to distract them so this guy can get back away because he got caught, he got seen. So hey, let's make some noise over here to get this guy gone. And they got so distracted and just here. But 4 people that day seen what they thought was a squatch in this area. But yeah, it was, and they had fairy lights, and they found, and we got some video of it. Again, if I had prepared, I'd have a lot of these pictures for you. But they did find some fairy lights in a cemetery that was about 3/4 of a mile away from the property. Red, greens, and blue lights. Some of them were chest high. You can see them in the pictures directly out in front of you. You can see them floating away into the woods. Some of them above you in the sky. It was just beautiful looking at the pictures, trying to figure out what that was. And all we could call them is fairy lights because that's what they look like to us. But yeah.
So a lot of those beings, most things, in especially in higher frequencies, if you're in a especially nowadays, humans vibrate at a very low frequency, just in general, because of all the things that we surround ourselves with and pollution, things like that. Other beings, many of them show up to us as a light or an orb or things like that because their Merkaba, their physical vehicle per se, moves faster than the human eye can detect. However, many people, if you catch that on, um, video or camera, things like that, and you slow it down, that's when you start getting silhouettes,
Hmm.
of many people said like fairies and things like that. Now, anytime in my experience, um, it's not like cryptids have different designated areas for all of them to be at. So in my experience, they many of them um, live amongst each other and very they're capable of um, all living together and existing in the forest, obviously. So but a lot of times people aren't able to differentiate between say what we consider like leprechauns or fairies or whatever, the tree spirits, things like that. um and it's no different than different races of people or animals, different species of animals, things like that. It's no different. There's so many. um and so I think that happens a lot of times too when people are investigating. They'll actually encounter multiple different beings and not even realize it, you know,
Hmm.
because they're not familiar with that. That's not even that's not their reality. So, um,
I can see
There,
that.
so you might try it's easy with iPhones now too. I don't know about Samsung. I haven't had an Android in a while. I'm actually going to go back to a flip phone here shortly. Just because I can't, I have a camera, so I don't need a smartphone. And I know how to
Correct.
survive in the wilderness. But on an iPhone, you take the live video, or not the live video, a live picture, a still picture, but it always does it, if you have that setting turned on, live. So you
Hmm.
actually have a short clip of whatever you've captured. A lot of people fail to, when they're doing investigations and stuff, a- as a medium, that's how I get messages a lot of the time. If I go back and I'm drawn to a specific picture, at face value, it might not seem like anything's there. I play it live and I'm like, oh, wow, I missed that. It might be a word, or it might be something that moved in that frame when you play it live. And I've caught so many things with that setting now, because you can loop it, and you can, there's loop, there's I can't think of the other settings right now, but there's like three different settings. Um, and it also has, iPhone also has the slow motion capabilities now, and time lapse. And so most recently, during we this last portal day, there were over 90 reports of UFOs, between Topeka and Kansas City. Yeah, it was last week. No, weekend before last. Which I mean, I always expect that. It's portal days. Um, but what you can do, your phone picks up what your eyes can't see. So a lot of times it'll put the little, like a camera trying to zoom in, um, even if you just point it at the sky or something. I could see like a what looked like a blemish, like there's something off about a cloud one day, and I'm like, well, obviously I can see that, but how can I prove this in a picture? And there's actually an app for blind people, where your phone will detect objects and people and animals, and it will put that on the screen, and it will speak that, you know audibly as well. And I pointed it at the cloud, and it said ship, and I'm like, well, and it outlines it,
Hmm.
and that's a new tool that's free to you can download the app, um and use, um in situations like that in the forest or in your house, or for spirits or whatever. They even have thermal imaging, like night vision apps. Instead of going, you don't need expensive equipment. If you intuitively feel something's different, that's how I used to save myself from certain negative entities, was from my iPhone years ago,
Really?
all the
Wow.
time. Yeah. And people might not, well, they might start believing it here shortly with all the changes in the world, but um I have tons of evidence that way. Yeah.
Well, I got a brand new Samsung. I have to try it out. I know it's got a few features on it, but
I've heard that Samsung can literally take a picture of like the surface of the moon
wow.
with their new cameras.
Yeah, this thing's supposed to have 100 times zoom, but I haven't tried it yet. So,
Yeah.
hmm.
So that's a way to capture things, especially in the forest, that you can't get close to. There's so many new drones. I don't Do you all use drones?
We have two drones. We're scared of them. I've got one that I've played with a little bit. I've not been able to uh, master it at all. So I'm trying though.
That's that's what everybody tells me, because as a photographer, I want to get into, get my drone flight certification or whatever. At the same time, I'm like, gosh, I have such a love-hate relationship with technology, even satellites. I'm like, is that cheating? That's kind of cheating, um, because that means we don't have to physically, now, which I love. Again, you can pull up Google Earth and go anywhere on this planet, literally. Um,
Right.
but at the same time, that's still cheating.
Yeah.
That's still cheating. That's like, um, so that's my reservation. But also, they're so expensive. So I'm
They
like, if
are.
I'm gonna buy one of these, a piece of $3,000 equipment, like in a good one, um, and then what if I crash it, like in the middle of the forest, somewhere that I can't get to? And
Yep.
but I
Yeah, and
guess,
you don't have good flight time on most of them. If you buy an, extended battery, you might get, 20 minutes out of it.
yeah.
Well, I'm just getting up and 300 yards into the forest and it goes dead. What do I do?
You know, um, and I guess that's any human, trial and error. Think about airplanes. The first one,
Right.
like that statement that was literally one of the first, Amelia Earhart. Like,
Yep.
well, I'm probably gonna run out of fuel, at some point. I don't know the area, and it's a very expensive vehicle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Have you explored? I want to go there. I can't ever think. I know it's the White Mountains, on the Oklahoma, Kansas, like Arkansas border. Um,
Uh, the Ozarks.
is that still part of the Ozarks, like the southern, where Jesse James, buried treasure is, or whatever?
Yeah. Ozarks. Yes. Yes.
That's still
Yeah.
Ozarks.
Yeah. The dark Ozark area down in Oklahoma. Ozarks go clear down into Tahlequah and Broken Bow, Little Rock,
So
Arkansas. So yeah.
Broken Bow. I'll have to do, this is a whole story in itself, and which also brings up, I don't know, some people have said Bigfoot, some people have said extraterrestrial, some have said, um like a witch doctor in a cave. But I had a dream. Um it's probably been, it was right when everything started opening up again. So it was probably 2020. It was probably 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, well, not even two. It was year before last. I know that. Um, I had a dream about these two little girls, um, that visited me, and I'd never seen them before. And this started popping up, uh, in my awake life. As far as, I bought, I don't know, some hairspray or something that had a little girl that looked almost exactly like the one in my dream that I bought before I had that dream. And I'm like, okay, well, that's obviously in my life, something I should pay attention to. And one night in the middle of the night, the story of a really old story too. This wasn't like one of the modern. This was like unsolved mysteries, from the 90s probably. Came up about the Fort Scott Girl Scout murders. And I I had, as soon as I woke up one of those days, I had drawn a map. And as soon they showed a map on TV, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's I drew that map. I drew the map of the route the murderer took for who killed these girls." I didn't know anything about the story, and that's actually when I first started embracing mediumship. But it got when I started having more dreams about that, about these caves down there. And yes, there was, a native, um nobody really, they called him witch doctor, shaman, whatever, but that was affiliated with that trial and everything. But then there were reports of UFOs and being some type of extraterrestrial, just attack and, massacre. There's been reports of hellhound, or like a black dog, which is common for things like that. Hellhounds, things like that. But this keeps coming up in my life, so obviously I'm probably supposed to investigate. It happened in the summer of 1970. I think it was 76, 78. Are you familiar? It's in the Broken Bow area there.
I'll have to look
Um,
that up. I have not. The only
yeah,
thing that
it's
gets
a
me,
big deal.
Broken Bow is a strange, unique place. I mean, of course, they have their Bigfoot and their Sasquatch down there big time. That's one of their biggest things down there. Of course, it's a reservation too. To me, again, protection of the species. But no, the big thing that gets me down there is the owl man. It's a half human, half owl. Where people have spotted him. He usually perches on top of a church, and if you see him, then you're going to die. And it's he's witch doctor basically.
Right.
He's a boneless man that turns into an owl. So yeah, you need to look that up. That's big down there.
And it's funny to me, being a witch, all these, it's so not only in native beliefs, but obviously in paganism and Wicca, and even other since Egyptian times, and many other cultures and religions and stuff. Um, I even had Denny Sargent 2 weeks ago on uh, werewolf magic. That he's up in the Washington area, and that's a big thing up there. And so, but it's not. It's everything's depicted in this movie, like, horrific um, sense, because yes, many witches, witch doctors, things like that use astral projection or embracing certain spirit animals, um, to harness um, some of those, if they want better vision or hearing or senses, or like that of an animal, things like that. And as with anything, as with any human for that matter, as with any animal, there's the good and the bad, obviously. Um, I was talking about that, like with the new Hocus Pocus coming out. Again, no, witches don't go around eating babies. Like, well, some do. Yes, some absolutely do. There's huge trafficking tribes of certain, witches. Well, I don't know if that part still exists as far as that goes. But back in the, obviously, um, in other times, other eras, it absolutely happened. But then there's the good too. There's um, in my own beliefs, I don't believe in harming anything. Anybody you can ask me, like, I will pick up a poisonous snake or spider or anything, and move it to a safer place. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't kill things. I don't. I don't. And so, uh, even with Mothman, I had a dream about Mothman. I actually had, and it was during all these sightings. I even, yeah, 2 weeks ago, before all of these shootings and everything else started happening again in Topeka, for that matter, and all the UFO sightings. Um, there was a dead bat um, in my yard one morning, and animals. There used to be a hawk that followed me everywhere in my life, like for, I don't know, a year and a half probably, and then I'll change to a different animal, and so I consider those at the time different. Sometimes they're different ancestors, sometimes they're guides, sometimes they are uh, other people's familiars that they've sent to spy on me. Sometimes they're um, other other beings, you know, um, concealing themselves as an animal. So you have to be able to discern what's the good from the bad. But it's like the it's like the clan of werewolves. They don't try to harm people. They try to boost their own confidence and strength and heal themselves, you know. Now
Mm.
some probably try to harm people, but I think, especially with like witches and stuff, I haven't decided. Yes, some do very bad things, but for the most part, like I said before, we're drawn to healing people and helping people. So we just happen to be at all these places where these bad things either are about to happen or already happened. And I'm wondering if that's the same case with like Mothman, Owlman, you know, there is a warning, absolutely, but it's like a black cat. The black cat itself is not always bad, but it's the symbolism that we've given to you know what I mean, like red
Yep.
flags.
Yep.
So I think we're just always in the wrong place at the wrong. It's like the Green Mile, you know. He's
Right.
the one that everybody thinks is big and just a monster and a felon, and he's the one that's trying to save everyone. And you know, I think a lot of times that that happens with the monsters of the world. What if Bigfoot's trying to do that? You know?
It could be telling you trying. Well, again, you go to the missing 411. You go to read the stories on that. So many.
I've never read that.
Well, I've read some of it. I've tried to watch the documentaries. They're not as good as the reading their chronicles or the but yeah. There's again. You were speaking earlier of children gone missing 2, 3, and 4 weeks out in the wilderness, and all of a sudden they're found at a trailhead, well fed, no big
Hmm.
issues. Said they lived with a family of hairy guys.
Yeah,
So I mean, and it's the same situation. Then of course there's some people that did come up missing, but
yeah.
yeah.
Now, even in my own experience, yes, while I say there were very good things in the woods growing up, you know, that I felt safe around, that I felt protected by, there were some very bad things that would try to I even recognize that now as an adult, that would try to lure me to the woods. Now that is the predator type
Mhm.
mindset, because you try to get something away from its pack, you know. And so other animals view, when they see a family unit together, people investigating together, whatever, if they have, especially demonic, anything really, um, of course, it's going to try to lure that one away from the pack, you know, and get, because that's just in any creature's mindset, you know. Obviously, taking on one, picking them off one by one is easier than the entire all of you together. So,
Yep.
um,
That happens in investigations often,
yeah.
but yeah.
And it even, I don't care how, you know, people are like, well, every psychic or medium or whatever I meet is always attacked by these things and is always, well, of course, just because, and we know it, we know what to look for, and we're still influenced all the time. Um, Now, granted, yes, I do have better discernment, obviously, than I did, you know, 10, 15 years ago. But yes, I am 100% capable of being attacked or manipulated or possessed or anything else, you know. Anyone is. Um, I think I think teaching people, I think we become so disconnected. You know, I talked about that with Denny Sargent, as far as he was talking about people harnessing, you know, embodying the spirit of a wolf or things like that. I think we've become so disconnected from that part of that's in our nature, you know, that makes it hard for us to discern what's dangerous and what's safe in any situation, even with people, you know,
Correct. Yeah.
especially with people.
Yeah.
Gosh, serial killers were always like the guy next door who, you know, you know what I mean?
Your best
Like,
friend for 30 years, you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
We had one
scary.
here in Wichita that got away with what he did for 35 years before they
Nobody would
found out who he
expect
actually
it.
was. So
Oh,
yeah.
man. We always talk about, well, when I lived in Colorado too, um, it was always the people from out of state or from cities that got attacked by bears and mountain lions.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why don't the people that live here get attacked by them? Because they live amongst. No, because we're not stupid. Like we don't.
Yeah. Who
we're
turns
not.
around
We're
and
not trying to feed them and pet them. You know.
yeah, here, go pet that buffalo.
Oh my! I
Take a
saw
picture.
that. I saw that.
He wants his picture taken.
Oh my
Nope.
goodness. I had family that used to live near Yellowstone as caretakers a long, long time ago. And the like boundaries. You if you live there, you know it's dangerous, right? Like,
Right.
we're not gonna go walk through a herd of buffalo. Like why would I do that? It's like walking through a herd of elephants. They're like 15 times my size. They can step on me, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
But then, but we think as humans, we're invincible, and with weapons and things like that, that, oh, it can't harm me. Or maybe if I don't see it, it's not there. That's the same as a person saying, I don't believe in negative entities that can affect my life. Okay, well, they believe in you. So that doesn't matter.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Just
I
because
think,
you didn't look the lion in the eyes doesn't mean he's going to eat you. He's going to eat you. Don't.
yeah, there's still, that's another one of those, oh my gosh, what was it? The guys that raised the tigers.
Oh, Sigfrid and Roy. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Um, that was it, it's like my kitten with my daughter. They love each other to death, but when one or the other's had enough, she like the kitten will bite her or something, and she doesn't
Yep.
do that to anyone else. She doesn't, but it's that whole power struggle thing. It's like it's still an animal.
Yeah.
So,
They still have their wild notions about them. Yeah.
and most things, even people, don't um don't become aggressive or aren't triggered unless they feel threatened. The
Right.
biggest part of our being is feeling safe, safe in our environment, safe amongst other people, animal, whatever it is. So that's that's the only, I was talking about allowing a brown recluse to live right next to my doorknob, my front door, for the longest time because um one, especially with witches, we consider them protectors of the home. Um, but also I'm not worried about fear's an illusion in that sense, and fear puts off a vibration of its own. I used to get bit. I was bitten by a brown recluse. I've been bitten by dogs, cats when I was younger. When I was younger, I was the one that got kicked out of zoos and stuff because it would upset my presence there would upset the tigers and the lions. And it's because I was afraid of them. So I was putting off of that, and animals tend to mirror, reflect our emotions, So once I figured out that they were only aggressive towards me and afraid of me and threatened by me and biting me because I was feeling the same way about them, you know. And I think that's important to remember in the woods. So I'm not worried about this brown recluse biting me because just because one has doesn't mean they're all going to bite me, you
Right.
know. So, but plus we're just coexisting in the same world.
You got to coexist. I don't like brown recluse spiders, so
I don't either, but like I said, most bugs, most infestations, whether it be due to spiritual entity, demonic things or extraterrestrials or what have you, they're usually there because they're attracted to, they actually aid in absorbing negative energy, certain insects. that's their role in our, you know, what do you call it? I was gonna say our bio, not biosphere. Oh my gosh,
Our
when you
echo
have
environment, or
like, yeah, um, and so no matter if you don't do something to change that environment, then they're gonna keep coming back no matter what you do, you know. And recently, I've heard all over people, we forget that. So if you get rid of whatever negative thing is in your home, whether it be spirits or people or bad electrical systems or what have you, usually the insects go away, you know. And so there's that. Yep,
yeah, here, yeah.
of course. Um, and it's like over the last few weeks, I heard people. What is that? Maybe it's me because I'm getting excited and I just started affecting the electrical systems. I zap out the whole. That's happened too. Um, but but over the last few weeks, people have talked about there being so many snails and slugs
Hmm.
in the Topeka area. I was like, okay, well, why would that be? It's not a weather difference because it hasn't fluctuated that much. Well, I was, the only again, TV comes on, gives me some message I needed to see, was talking about during the World War, I believe it was World War I, maybe. The military utilized snails and slugs to detect radiation.
Hmm.
So, makes you wonder, because you can get radiation from the environment too, from the soil, from the sun, from whatever. And so I started thinking about it. I'm like, I had a dream and a channeling back in like April during the spring equinox about, I said something about a massive solar flare. And I'm like, maybe, I start thinking I have to prove things scientifically because I'm one of those people too. I'm like, maybe there has been, that's why I've been like, man, it's so nice. I don't want to go outside, but I've been trying to avoid well, I always try as a redhead to avoid the highest sun parts of the day. But I'm like, maybe there's a reason I've been, intuitively not going outside because maybe the sun, I know solar flares have been worse this year, but maybe in this specific time because I've seen so many of these slugs and snails that maybe that's actually a reason, you know. So anytime I feel threatened by spiders or bugs or snakes or anything, there's a reason they're there. There's something else there. Those are the places you should investigate.
Good call.
Unless you're like me and just, you know, I consider um since mosquitoes love to eat me, the spider's webs catch mosquitoes, so and flies. You're doing me a favor.
Well, that is a good way to look at it as well. Yes. Yeah, we have recluses often in our basement. The house does have a spirit in it. The basement is a little different, but I always try to figure out why basements are always haunted. I haven't been able to figure that one out yet. But basements are always the creepiest spot of any that are attics. So, but
I think basements are because um spirits often are, well, for two reasons. Either A, they're buried under your house and you're closer to the ground in the basement, you're underground in the basement, or um, because actually, I just thought of something, a totally different theory that I had never thought of on that. Well, I was going to say because a lot of times they use, it's like people to ground yourself. You have to be closer to the earth, right?
mhm.
So with spirits to manifest, they can use the earth as an element to manifest or um but then I was thinking about what we were talking about, we don't always know what's in our environment. So it's like living in an apartment complex or a high-rise building or something, or, condo. You don't know what's below, above or below you.
Hmm. True that.
Pompeii, they built an entire city that lived over that for how many, like 30 years before they ever realized that city was sitting on top of another city.
Correct. Yeah.
So I know, I'm sure Wichita does. Well, of course, Wichita. What am I talking about? I didn't even realize that big pyramid they built underground there. Um, is it like a hospital or something? Like there's a pyramid under Wichita. Like what's that called? It's the
We have the biodomes. Don't know if any pyramid, but
yeah. So it's just within the last, I don't know. Kansas has the most extensive underground storage and tunnel system out of any state in the United States, because the military used to store, it was temperature controlled. They used to
hmm
store documents and stuff. That's another reason, actually, spirits might like the basement, because it stays cool and it's dark there. Temperature control. So that would go along more with interdimensional beings, or another, I don't know, something that lives underground perhaps, because I always considered the Jason months, like the horror movies and stuff, right? Which would be, uh, you just go JASON, right? So July, August, September, October, November. That's always in my life where I experience the most attacks spiritually. Um, I was abducted the most during those months. Things like that, that were the most dangerous was the Jason months. And I always think of, like Jason, um, the horror movie serial killer Jason type. Um, and that's how I remember that, July through November. And um, if that were the case, that's fall. Like that's the perfect climate. That's also when certain planets align on those
hmm
portal days, um, which makes interdimensional travel easier. So,
Wow,
and that would have to do with climate, because they can't come in the heat as much.
that would make sense. It's pretty deep. I have
Sorry.
to remember that the
Went off
Jason
on
thing.
a
No,
on
that's
a yeah, I went off on a tangent there.
no, no, no. It's good though.
Those
Wow.
are all, and people don't, it astonishes me. I'm not saying you specifically, but any investigating group, and it might, again, I'm autistic, so I often see things completely different than, from a different perspective than others. And then I also don't understand how others see things from equally um amazing perspectives. So it goes both ways. But um there's the first thing I do on any investigate, I don't care if I'm researching a plant or animal or whatever, is pay attention to the time, 100%. Because yes, timing is fluid, but numbers are very symbolic,
hmm
um, in the way the universe works, and science has proven that, along with it's like the Tesla code and everything else. Numbers have their own frequency. So if you assign a time of day, a logistical um, degree on the Earth, things like that, uh, it's important to pay attention. Map coordinates, things, the day of the year, all of that, the phase the moon was in, because you start to see a pattern. And people say, well, some days I go to this place and I get tons of activity, and some days I go to this place and there's nothing. Well, th- that's because most likely you were drawn there on a portal day. So, of course, you're going to get tons of activity. And then any other day, it's going to seem like just a normal place. because it's not, it's almost like opening up the freeway. you know,
Right.
all of a sudden, and so there's tons of traffic coming through, but then other times it's closed
We've
when you're
experienced that
underground.
with our public. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know that I know this it's this pyramid and it was built and then there's like not that much information about it. Um I was always
Yeah.
drawn to Wichita because it has the same flag as the New Mexico state flag.
I love Wichita to an extent. I wish they would. Well, we have a hard time with Wichita with accepting the paranormal, the history of this place, and they don't like it. The people like it. The city does not. So, but
Why
yeah,
do you think that
there's
is?
they don't want to sit there and base their city on history and knowledge. I mean, it's we go to Western Kansas. They strive on the history because history is what made them. But Wichita, they want to strive on the aircraft industry. They want to strive on, well, jobs, and they don't want to strive on the historical side of what we have. There's so much history here.
There's so much history in Kansas. I had no idea. No idea. And it goes back further than people realize. And we're just now discovering that. What was it, last year, year before last? Archaeologists discovered some of the oldest shark fossils, in Western Kansas, in the entire world. Like that's because if you think about it, when water would have been here, on the flip side of um, before it was the prairie, um, that was a long time ago, obviously. And
Right.
but there's other things too that are amazing. You know, and there's been a lot of bloodshed too, because we're like the halfway point, but we're where everybody came to fight.
Well,
But
they found one of the first Aztecan cities in Kansas down by Ark City. It's
hmm
3,500 plus years old.
yeah,
It's they've so far they think they've found 10,000 residences down there uh,
wow, I didn't know.
from the Aztec city. I try to pronounce the name, but it'd be wrong. But Etzinetza or something of that nature.
Huh.
But
I didn't know it was that there were that many. But there's a lot, you know, even like the prairie grass in the Flint Hills, outside of in the Manhattan Salina area. Most people don't realize. I watched this at the Discovery Center there in Manhattan. They have the whole history, of the prairie grass. The roots of prairie grass is longer than any other grass. I believe any other plant in the entire world. It goes what, like, I don't know how many feet down. It's crazy. Um, so in spirituality and the metaphysical world, when you consider something's power, um, it's like the redwoods of Colorado. I almost said Colorado. Good Lord, of California. They're older, so of course you have the wisdom, but their roots go deeper than any other tree. So it's the same with like the prairie grass has longer roots, so it's closer to the source.
mhm.
Um, and that's what makes it resilient, I guess. And I think that's why a lot of things are underground.
I'll
Plus,
tell
we
you.
like to bury our past.
Yes, yeah, we do that well. I tell you what, driving through the Flint Hills in the evening time and just looking across that and seeing, well, not for sure what you see, but you see some things.
Oh,
It, the lights and there's stuff out there that and there's nothing there for miles, but you see lights and you see movement and it's so beautiful.
yeah.
But yeah,
I wrote a poem actually about the prairie land and life on the prairie years ago, um, which was interesting because in the astronauts talked about fireflies, but I talked about the fireflies of the prairie because they're always there. They live there. They're there during the daytime for that matter. They don't go away, but we only notice them when they allow themselves to be seen, which is a good reminder in the paranormal world. It's always there, you know. Um, and it, I know it takes people one a lot. It's a lot to accept that. Um, but it's also a lot to get used to, especially as a medium. Like I blocked that part out of my life for a long time, and now, yeah, it is. It's like people around me all the time, 100%, and things, and always, always. No, I'm never alone. None
Right.
of us are, but I'm
No.
consciously never alone, like ever. you know.
Well,
And
we
so,
all live on the same plane.
mhm.
We're just in a totally different dimension. Just a different level.
Different levels,
It's,
different devils,
yes.
as they say. I don't remember what that was a quote from. It was something back in the 80s or 90s. Um,
Because the
but
spirit world's, yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's a horrible disservice that we don't teach that as the first thing to learn in school, or um, I think eventually we will. But
Well, it's kind of crazy. We're actually, uh, Jason, I, and Jake on the team, we're going to be speaking to a school in a couple weeks. They have a paranormal research, well, a paranormal class. Uh,
no,
like,
really,
yeah,
huh?
it was kind of, yeah, it's like their JC class or a band class, but it's a paranormal small group that we're going to speak to here. It's on the 17th, I believe. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Never done anything like that at a school, so we'll see.
That is exciting because it makes us more accepting,
Yes.
not only of our own experiences, about talking about our experiences, about sharing them with others, um, but accepting of sharing the world with other beings.
Yeah.
We're not all high and mighty here as humans. It's not We don't own the earth, just like we don't own the universe. I never got that. Like, who put us in charge of, like, oh, that planet's mine and that one's mine and that one's mine. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
it does-
That
like,
moon belongs to Earth. That's ours. We own that.
yeah, yeah.
We got a
How
flag
could
on there.
you own the moon? Like, what do people? It doesn't even make sense to me. It doesn't. It's absolutely absurd. Um, but it's the same concept that we sell energy, electricity, water. We buy water. We buy air, for that matter. We buy filtered air.
Right. Yes.
Why? Why? Kansas, of all places, we import beef here. Do you
Yeah.
know how crazy that is?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, why would we be importing beef from anywhere? Why?
We export all our wheat out and we buy wheat from foreign countries, but
Oh
we sell
my
all ours to
gosh.
foreign. It's just a money grab.
Yeah. But it would use so many, the resources that we could cut down on if we just utilize what we have, you know.
Yes.
And that's why I think these programs in schools, to give us a better understanding, so the next generation doesn't go around killing everything, and then 100 years down the road be like, oh, shit, we probably should have saved that because it probably could have helped us. So
Exactly.
um we should be training more deep divers instead of astronauts, like, use what we have. I don't get it. I can't. I
Yeah.
can't do it.
Well,
Well,
right now, I mean, our bees, our wild bees and our
oh,
honeybees, and that's that's going to be the end of us if we sit there and leave these to extinction.
I just learned this last night by coming across, I do genealogy too, and I came across an old newspaper article, Did you know, because this is coming up, Thanksgiving time, turkeys almost went extinct
No,
during the Great Depression. Yeah. Yeah,
really?
all of
Wow.
a sudden, other meat was not available. They cattle and pork and those industries, and because the farmers couldn't afford not only the feed but all of those additional costs, and so turkey hunting and breeding and farming and everything became really big, and especially there was a whole I forget what town it was, somewhere in the west. There was like a whole turkey thing. Yeah, they just, slaughtering turkeys, and then the hunters, by overhunting, they were almost extinct, which is hard to believe now because we have an abundance. Well, you would think we have an abundance of turkeys, but
Right.
that's how easy, and due to specific conservation efforts during that time, they brought them back. That's it's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
that's how easy it happens, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even humans are on a path now of almost a point of almost no return, of repopulating, of a rate of repopulating, humanity. Because over the years it's become not and this is since the 70s. This includes, um, countries like China, and that restricted, how many kids people could have and stuff. So all this stuff we're doing, perhaps all these other things are like literally trying to show us the way and smack us in the head every single day and be like, look, like, you need to wake up and see what you're doing. And because it affects them too, and maybe that's what these extraterrestrials are doing, obviously.
Could
But
be, yes.
we're
Hopefully
like,
somebody listens soon.
oh my gosh, they're probably like, oh my god, we can't just sit aside and watch this. Oh man, they're just going to destroy themselves. And we're literally like the aliens, depiction of South Park every single day. They're like, they're like,
Yes.
okay, we got to go save them again from.
Wow.
Well, Dan, I didn't even realize it's 10:06. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. I want to get together. It'd be fun to go live and do some. I could show you all some places around here, and or even I've never actually, I've been through Wichita many times, but I've never actually stopped there. I've never, you know, um, explored the area or anything. I do want to go to Oklahoma, the northern part of Oklahoma. So
There's a lot to see there. There's a lot to see here. If you ever come down through here, let us know. We'll show you some places, and we can come up there real quick too. We come to Topeka a lot, so we've been to a few
really,
places up there. Yeah. Well, we
see,
haven't in the last year, but we have. So
well, shoot, I mean, see, everything we say is relevant. Yes, shoot, is becoming absolutely ridiculous here. The crime, is insane this
it
last
is.
year here. So that is one of the things that I try to consider as well when going anywhere here, is the safety. I
Right.
always tell people to be safe, especially in abandoned buildings or forests or wherever, trails. As I said, I'm more worried about humans I'm in an encounter than I am any animal being, whatever, out there. So,
I'm there
um,
with you for sure.
yeah, definitely, we'll have to set something up. Um,
Okay.
Again, tell everyone what the name of your website, your
Yeah.
Facebook site, I
Okay.
guess.
So on Facebook, you can find us RTP or Road Trip Paranormal. Also, you can find us under Kansas Bigfoot Research Society. We're going to be adding a lot to that. We're getting ready to go do some exploring here relatively soon. We're going to get some more pictures. We're gonna start posting our pictures on that website as well of our castings that we do have, of the hair samples that we have that we need to get tested someday. And then again, as far as actual hard websites, is rtpkansas.com. And we will have Bigfoot Research, Kansas Bigfoot Research Society tagged on there as well. So you can find us all there.
And you can, I will also, um, put that in my, not right this second, people. Don't be like, I went there right now because I can't see my YouTube page, but I will post that on my in my about section in the comment, or not the comments, the about section there. I also started doing something because my daughter, sometimes both my kids actually always, they're highly intuitive. A lot of times they channel just as much, if not more than I do, certain places and things. So my daughter always wants, we always do scavenger hunts in the forest and things like that. So I'm doing a new thing and to incorporate kids. So a lot of these things like witches, aren't as scary as they've been made out to be in movies, and Bigfoot, the same thing. So I have created, I'm going to post it if you go to my YouTube page, like this video, subscribe, because it is my personal YouTube site is newer, so I haven't really advertised it, but I'm putting the link to, I have like a free kids printable, there's a coloring page, there's some, there's like random, I know everybody likes printables for kids that they don't have to do anything. There's random scavenger hunts, things to look out for. There's different, oh gosh, I don't know if you can see. There's like a little Sasquatch fact sheet that they can write their own, findings and stuff. And I will post the link to that in my about section too. You can go there and just print that off. So if you have kids or even adults, I like to color, so there is that. Um, Otherwise, again, Dan, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I look forward to working with you all in the future and talking to you again. And everyone else, have a safe week out there. This is my most exciting month. It's like Christmas, for which it is. October is our new year, basically, after Samhain. So I've got a lot of things coming up this month. Be sure to stay tuned. And thank you to Carnation again for sponsoring us. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.